Well, yeah, Couyons. Tonight we got an Indian single malt. So we'll drink a whole lot of Indian whiskeys. They really don't have a whole lot to choose from, but we've done a few on the channel actually. But tonight we get Amrut Indian Single Malt from India, 46% ABV, and that's what we're looking at tonight. So Amrut Single Malt. This one's made from 100% Indian barley. There's another version called Amrut Fusion, which is a fusion of Scottish barley and Indian barley. But this one is the just Indian single malt made from 100% Indian barley, which I think is a different barley species, obviously, but definitely different in flavor. So I found we've done a Paul John, another Indian single malt. They have the same characteristics when it comes to flavor, but we'll get into that. The Paul John we have was a cask strength, and I've had the original Paul John and this Amrut, and they both, like, coming from different regions, bourbon, Scotch, Japanese whiskey, Indian whiskey, they all have their own characteristics, their own uniqueness, designated to each region. And it's just where the whiskey's made, what grains they use and whatnot. Indian whiskey, they don't have classifications like bourbon do, and bourbon does, and Scotch whiskey does, where there's different rules and stuff like that. I'm sure they have some kind of guidelines, but Indian whiskey is very cheap in India. They had sugarcane juice sometimes in their whiskey, which, everybody else in the whiskey world, we would call that rum. I mean, it's sugarcane, spirits. We call it rum. But they call it whiskey there. It's really cheap. I've never had it before, but I would like to try it. But their really premier whiskey is this Amrut. So they actually started making single malts. This one's made from just 100% single malt. There's no sugarcane juice or anything like they do with their cheaper versions of their whiskey, but this one's good. All the grains, the barley claims it's coming from the select Indian barley grown at the foot of the Himalayas. It's 46% ABV. Like I said, the barley's from Belarus, India. But yeah, we'll get into it. So color-wise, Indian whiskey, the region itself, very much like Louisiana or Texas, hot, humid, very hot and humid, very much unlike Scotland. That's like always cold. I ain't gonna say always cold, but 30 to 70 degrees is their climate. Very mild climate. They don't get extremes in cold or extremes in heat. Whereas United States gets a little bit of both, and then places like India would be just hot, humid. So, guy coming from Louisiana, I might know a little something about little hot and humid. You know what I'm saying? But hot and humid climates, you really can't age whiskey a long time. And if you're looking at this whiskey, this is a natural color, non-chill filtered. So that looks like a 12-year Scotch, 10-year Scotch. That's what that looks like. If we're talking about uncolored whiskey, non-colored, natural whiskey, naturally made whiskey. So there's no coloring added to it, but it really looks like it would put about 12 years on it. It looks like a 12-year Scotch, but it's a 3 to 4 year natural colored whiskey made in India. So it's really pulling some color and flavor from the wood in a little bit of amount of time it's in there because it's just hot. That being said, I mean, it's aged in ex-bourbon barrels, and I think a little bit of new oak, but mostly ex-bourbon. I think it's a blend of new oak and ex-bourbon barrels. Getting into the nose of it. So, very unique flavor. And just notes in it in general. So it's caramel, almost like a honey lemon. Definitely a citrus nose to it. You get barrel spices and you get an oak. So just being in there for 3 years or 3 to 4 years is picking up a lot of oak. But you definitely getting like there's a sharpness of the spice, and it's a young whiskey, so you still getting a little bit of sharpness, I find, anyway, just from the youth. But not confrontation. It's not like a off-putting nose at all. It's not that sharp, but you do get a little sharpness from the youth. But yeah, definitely mostly caramel, honey, lemon, and like cinnamon and nutmeg notes from possibly like ex-bourbon cask. Well, let's get into the flavor, guys. Cheers. On the flavor, it's like a caramel chew, almost like a those little square caramel chews. Um, it's sweet, creamy. So you get a little creaminess in the nose whenever you smell it, but mostly in the taste, that creaminess comes out with the caramel. Lemon's there. You get that citrus. A lot of spices. So the only way I can describe it is it's an Indian spice that's unique to the region. So when we've had the Paul John whiskey, we had Paul John Select Cask or Cask Select. It was the cask strength version of Paul John, unpeated. There's a peated version and there's unpeated. I bought the unpeated, and it has this same Indian spice in it. I don't even know how to describe it other than just it's oak. It's spicy and it's oak, almost like not quite curry, but like a licorice. So it comes off like a cinnamon licorice kind of note. Sweetness comes in early. I said caramel chew, and the honey comes in there. Slight little citrus. Mid palate opens up to this spice and that Indian note, that Indian spice note, and then it kind of lasts for a good while. The finish is it's still rolling. You getting at the end, whenever that spice note comes in, you kind of get that cinnamon licorice, goes into like a wood oak, and then it kind of gets creamy at the end, which is kind of odd. Like you don't really, most whiskeys, the spice comes in the end in the oak, but this one kind of finishes like very smooth and creamy. It does still have like a youthfulness, barely. You can taste like it's a little young, but nowhere near like what a young bourbon would taste like. This one is very rounded for 3 years. Like, I don't even know how to call it. It's a mature, youthful whiskey. It's weird to even say that, but it's only a 3 year whiskey, but it really tastes rounded and mature, I guess. In the Indian climate, 3 years is adds some good maturity to the whiskey. I don't think you can even do a 12-year whiskey there, because it'll be it'll be over oaked. It would taste like wood, you know. But this is good. It's a good whiskey. So there's a cask strength version out. Haven't had the cask strength. Would really love to buy cask strength, but tasting it, to be honest with you, with the youthfulness in it, I think this one's 46%. So you look at it 92 proof. This one's probably better than the cask strength, I would think. I would buy the cask strength one. If it's the same age, 3 to 4 years, you might have to tame it down a little bit more, I would think. But this one goes for about $50 a bottle, and to be honest with you, it's a steal at $50. So I bought this one. We put it through its paces. It's down to the very bottom. Where I was like, you know what? It's time to review it. So after I bought this one, I loved it so much, I ended up buying another bottle. So I got a back of this one, just ready to roll for whenever I want another pour Amrut after this one's gone. Yeah, definitely like a creaminess that's not in a whole lot of whiskeys, and that Indian spice is good. It's very unique. It's a unique whiskey. So if you're into Scotch, it's ex bourbon, so it has some bourbon notes to it. I would think it's more related to Scotch, being a single malt. So it's got that Scotch flavor to it, but it tastes like a 12-year Scotch that has like a that Indian note in it. So like it's with like that licorice, creamy caramel kind of note, which is very unique to Indian whiskey. So I wouldn't say it tastes different from Scotch, but it's closely related to Scotch than other whiskeys. It's good though. Definitely unique. So uh, whiskey rating on it, Couyons rating, I'm giving it a 7.25. Definitely would recommend this whiskey, especially if you haven't had any Indian whiskeys before. This one, Paul John, and probably Rampur or Rampur. It's Rampur is how you spell it. But Rampur is how I pronounce it anyway. Amrut, Rampur, and Paul John will be the three to pick from. With all the three, this one's probably one of the better ones at Amrut. Just a regular, probably bang for your buck, $50. If you want to try an Indian whiskey, I'd go with the Amrut single malt. Um, that being said, I mean, great whiskey. If you have ever had Amrut before, any versions of Amrut, whether it be the Fusion, Cask Strength, this one, they make peated versions. If you ever had the peated stuff, if you're a smokehead and you like some peated whiskey, let me know what you think about it. And we'll see you guys in the next review.